She broke me, so I ruined her entire life. It all starts about 10 years ago. I was happily engaged to a girl who I knew for about 9 years but had only been dating for about 1 year. Let's call her Nancy. MC effing Duntbag. All was good. She had her dream engagement ring, we had a nice house together, both had steady jobs, and the wedding plans were coming along nicely. About 2 months prior to the wedding we found out we were going to have a baby. Such happiness had never been felt before. Wedding plans continued and the big day was only 28 days away. I come home from work and find that Nancy isn't home. I call her to see if she got held up at work and to see what time she might be home. But Nancy wasn't at work, she was at her grandmother's house, in another state. Nancy calmly told me that she no longer wanted to get married and that she was not coming home. Complete and utter shock. What in the duck just happened? I try to call her back. Her phone is off. I call her grandmother. No answer. What about the wedding? What about our baby? What about everything? No answers. No contact for 3 days. 3 days of no breath in my body, no clues, nothing. On day 4 Nancy shows up and starts packing her stuff. She won't say a word to me. Nothing. She leaves and sends me an email saying that she can't be with me. Again, no reasons. I begin calling her sister and asking what the duck happened. Her sister tells me that she has no idea but gives me their mom's phone number. Strange. Nancy said her mom was out of the picture because she was in abusive substances. Nevertheless, I call mom. Mom tells me that I am lucky number 3 who has fallen for this trap. Nancy cut mom out of her life so mom couldn't ruin Nancy's game of milking guys for money and resources. Nancy has been pregnant twice before and had miscarriages and milked guys for everything she could before running off to super Christian grandma's house and claiming abuse so grandma will take her in until the dust settles and she can do it again. What the duck? Weeks go by and still no contact with Nancy. I've lost 20 pounds and have been counseled at my job for poor work performance. My family is mad as duck. Family members lost money on travel plans to the wedding, and I am mortified. I lost all of the deposits on everything for the wedding since it was less than 30 days before it was cancelled. I'm piss broke. I check our joint bank account, negative $2,000. Duck. Guess I won't be paying the mortgage. I start to get my shot together and my sadness turns to rage. I had so much anger inside of me I actually had to scale it back a bit or I might have gone to prison. A month and a half after the split I get a text. I had a miscarriage. You stressed me out too much and my daughter is dead now. Daughter? I was having a daughter? You're blaming me for this? That's it. I'm going to unalive this witch. No. Wait. Take this witch apart at the seams. A few days of drinking get me over the hump of sadness again. Back to rage. Let's do this. Most of Nancy's shot was still at my house, which I have to walk away from because I can afford it. I start to pack it all up in order to get rid of it somehow. But I stumble upon a few things. Her resume and her checkbook to her personal bank account. I read her resume. It's all bullshit like everything else. I hop on the computer, create a new Yahoo email address and send a long letter to her corporate office telling them line by line how it's all lies. Feels good. Operation Checkbook. I sign her name on every check and rip them all out of the book. I drive 30 minutes to the seediest part of town and leave them on a sidewalk in front of an AM/PM. Too much good stuff. I go back home and throw out all of her shot. Duck it. Sue me witch. Except her laptop. I keep that shot. 2 weeks go by. Nancy calls. I don't answer. Voicemail says she got laid off due to cutbacks. I know that's not true. Duck yeah. 2 more weeks go by and letters from some district attorney's bad check restitution program begin to trickle in the mail. Duck yeah. Oh, and the registration renewal for her car. Shred all that shot. Oh. While I'm at it I might as well put a change of address in for her at the post office. Where to? The temporary shelter for the homeless sounds good. I hear through a mutual friend that since Nancy is out of work now she is staying with friends and supported financially by super Christian grandma. Duck that. I hop on her laptop and make a new Yahoo email address that is only one number different from Nancy's real email. I email super Christian grandma a video of Nancy finger blasting herself that I had saved. I titled the email, "Hey grandma, check out this video I took of my job. I hope I uploaded it right. Duck yeah. Email reply. You are disgusting. I hope your new job pays well because I'm not supporting you if you act like that. Oh, damn. A 2-for-1 deal. Embarrassment and financial distress. Noise. Weeks go by and I get a call from Rent a Center. WTF? Oh, they want all of Nancy's furniture back. I had no idea it was rent to own shot. I tell them I don't have it. They argue and say she says and have it. I stick to my guns and tell them I do not have it and I don't know where it is. That night I burn it all in the yard. $4,200 owed. Zing. I find out that Nancy has a new job and as I am planning my next move I hear great news. Nancy has been arrested and is in jail for embezzlement. Apparently she had some money problems and stole $5,000 out of petty cash and got busted. Oh god, this is great. She ducked herself. Months go by with no updates, and then I hear from a friend that she was bailed out of jail by grandma after only a few days and ended up taking a plea bargain for a felony conviction and 3 years of probation along with restitution. Wrecked. I hang my hat and call it a day. I have gotten my revenge. I'll leave it there. Time to move on. A couple months later the phone rings. It's a repo company looking for info on where Nancy is because they are trying to repossess her car. Ha ha ha. Okay. One last nail in the coffin. I make a few calls and find the address where she is staying. I call the repo company back and give them the info. They thank me and say I am eligible for a $100 reward if they get the car back. No, thanks. This one's on me. Nancy is now a felon, jobless, and a single mom of a kid she recently had from some random guy. She lives in an apartment with her brother and his girlfriend. I am happily married with a beautiful daughter and a great life. Yesterday I get a Facebook message from Nancy. Congrats on the marriage and daughter. I'm glad you're happy, I reply. Go duck yourself, she blocked me. Life is good. Sometimes taking the low road heals the soul. What's the sweetest revenge you've ever seen? There was a really beautiful, popular girl my friend Mike had a serious crush on. He asked her out several times but she was always busy. She never really discouraged him though, I think she liked the attention. One day Mike got a hold of 2 tickets to a sold-out U2 concert. He bought them from a friend who had to go out of town for an emergency. Mike immediately called the girl of his dreams and of course she accepted. He was thrilled and everything seemed fine. The night of the concert, they're at the arena waiting for the show to begin and she suddenly says, "Oh, I see my friend, I'll be right back." You guessed it, she never returned. Mike stayed at the seats since that's the only place she would logically look for him. When the show ended, Mike, ever the gentleman, waited for a long time so he could drive her home. But saw no sign of her. She didn't answer her phone or texts. He left feeling so hurt. By the next morning he was rightfully pissed. She called him around noon apologizing and saying she ran into her ex. She said they had a long talk and worked out a lot of stuff and lost track of time. She had actually missed the concert to go be with her ex. He accepted her apology and asked if they could try again. She accepted and told him how very nice and forgiving he was. She had underestimated him. The next Saturday evening, he took her to a very expensive seafood restaurant about an hour up the coast. He was polite and chatty the whole way up there. He made the reservation in her name. They were seated, ordered a nice bottle of wine, some expensive appetizers and entrees totaling roughly $300. Then Mike excused himself to go to the men's room. He very deliberately said, "I'll be right back." He walked out to the parking lot and drove away, leaving her with the bill and without a ride. Have you ever met someone in jail who was really nice but committed horrible crimes? During my time in prison, I met a really nice guy who was serving 2 life sentences. It was really difficult for me to understand the idea of having so much time, so I asked him about it. Turns out the guy was a Vietnam War veteran. He was a tunnel rat, which meant he had to crawl into holes to clear them using only his boot knife. He became very skilled at it during his time there. Meanwhile, his tour was almost over and he was looking forward to coming home. However, he kept hearing stories about his sister being in an abusive relationship. He explained that normally he didn't get involved in other people's relationships, but this was his sister, and he was very protective of her. It was hard for him to accept that she was in an abusive relationship after spending years fighting overseas. So he wrote her a letter to tell her to end the relationship, hoping he would never have to meet the guy who was hurting his sister. Finally, he returned to the United States. He took a cab from the airport to his home, but when they entered the neighborhood, the police had everything blocked off due to a crime scene investigation. He didn't want to cause any trouble, but he explained that he had just come back from Vietnam and he just wanted to get home, which was only a block away. So they asked for his address, and he gave it to them, but then a detective asked him to come down to the police station. He told them again that he had just returned from Vietnam and didn't know anything about what was going on, but the police insisted. Reluctantly, he went to the police station and was told that his sister and mother had their lives taken by his sister's boyfriend. Apparently, the guy didn't take kindly to the breakup. The police had arrested the boyfriend, and it seemed like an open and shut case. He was in custody, and the police asked him not to interfere and let them do their job. However, it turned out that the boyfriend had been released on bail. This Vietnam vet had friends who knew where the guy hung out. So he went to a bar where the boyfriend liked to go and had him pointed out. He approached the guy at the pool table and started talking to him. He explained that he had just come back from Vietnam and that he was a tunnel rat there. He showed him his combat knife and described what it was like crawling through tunnels with that knife. He told stories of encountering spiders the size of basketballs rushing at him, and how he had to end them without giving away his position. But the guy wasn't interested. He just wanted to know if the vet wanted to bet on the pool game. So the vet made a bet with him. He told him that he was going to use that same knife he used in Vietnam to skin him alive, and he bet that nobody in the bar would stop him. And that's exactly what he did. He kept cutting up the guy until the police arrived. When he went to court, the judge wasn't too happy about his vigilante justice and convicted him. But when he was asked if he wanted to say anything before sentencing, he asked for the name of the judge who had granted the man bail. Facing the hardest decision. Ending things with the man I love because I don't want kids. This might long cause him overwhelmed and can ramble, so I added a TLDR at the bottom. I'm sorry, my 30th boyfriend 34 meters and I have been together for the last 4 years. Our first date was basically our whole life stories and just talking about everything and anything, whether it be deep or not. I would say most of our relationship has been this way. Even when we fight, which has maybe happened a couple of times, we will take a break, regroup once emotions settle. When we disagree, we talk it through. He looks at me like I'm the most beautiful person has ever seen. He constantly tells me how lucky he is to have me and how I deserve the world. We both love to cook, clean for the other person, so we always have different games set up and the loser gets to relax while the winner gets to pamper the loser. I know it sounds weird, but it works for us. I love this man so much and I know he loves me just as much. Now here's the problem. A couple months into us dating, kids got brought up. Communication is super important to me and him, so I told him I didn't want kids. He thought I was joking because all my friend siblings have kids at this point and I'm the fun tia auntie. I even put together parties for the kids and fun themed days when I'm having one-on-one time with them. I do love kids, but I don't want any of my own. I explained that and he said, well, maybe you haven't met the right guy. I had to sit him down and explain that while I do believe people can change, he cannot be with me expecting my opinion about kids to change. He needs to take my not wanting kids at face value instead of hoping that I will change my mind, because what if I don't change my mind? I asked him to think it through for a week or two and then we can circle back to the topic, because at this point we are thinking about being official. But if kids were that important to him, then we needed to stop now before it gets much harder down the line. He told me later that kids are not that important to him and that he can see a future without kids in it. Fast forward to a month ago, his parents and some extended family were visiting for my boyfriend's brother's wedding. We are in the US and his family is from Eastern Europe. I've always gotten along with his parents as brother's now wife. His parents will visit a couple times a year and have always been so kind, thoughtful. At the wedding reception, I was being introduced to all of the family. Eventually someone asked when my boyfriend and I were getting married and my boyfriend just winked at the question because he knew I already knew that he was planning to propose soon. He just asked way too many ring-related questions since he knows I hate diamonds but wasn't sure the direction he should go in. Since I barely wear rings, he could propose to me with a ring pop for all I care. Later at one point, one of his cousins asked how I would feel about my future kid learning their native language, to which I responded, "Oh, I don't want kids but am actually learning the language myself." There were a few members of the family around including my boyfriend's parents. No boyfriend though, and they all gave me the "what the hell are you saying" look. I didn't understand why I was getting that look, so I just awkwardly laughed and asked everyone not to tell my boyfriend I was learning the language because I wanted to surprise him. I thought it would be cute to respond to his proposal in his native language. I went looking for my boyfriend and found his brother, the bride, instead. We were talking and eventually I asked, "Hey, is it weird in your culture to not have kids? 'Cause I got weird looks from your parents when I said I don't want kids." His brother proceeds to tell me that it's not weird but that my boyfriend has always wanted to have kids, so it probably shocked their parents to hear that I didn't want kids. Apparently my boyfriend always wanted at least 3 kids and he had always been super excited about the idea of having kids. I think his brother noticed the look on my face and backtracked a bit, saying something like, "Wait, it's not a big deal." He changed his mind because he loves you more than the idea of having kids. On the ride back home with my boyfriend, I asked my boyfriend if he really is okay about not having kids. He sighed cause apparently he had heard from his parents about what I said. He apologized about it and said that he did stop talking about kids since we have been together, but that his parents always assumed we would have kids. He also sometimes wonders if I will change my mind, but he doesn't think I ever will. He said that when we talked about this while we were dating, he could imagine a future without kids because he couldn't imagine a future without me. It's been a month since the wedding, but I've started to notice little things with my boyfriend. A lot of our friends have kids and I am always letting my friends know that they can bring their kids over instead of having to find a babysitter. I've noticed that my boyfriend looks slightly envious when he sees our friends interact with their kids, or sometimes I see him look slightly dejected when he sees a family with a bunch of kids. Maybe this is in my head now that I know that Hess always wanted to be a dad until he met me. Maybe it's not in my head. I truly want him to be happy, but I know I don't want to be a mom. I wish I felt different and I wish I could compromise this for him, but I would never want to bring kids into this world knowing I don't want them. That's not fair to the kid. And if him being happy means he finds someone else to have kids with, I will have to live with that. He knows something is wrong cause he said I feel far away lately. I think he knows why. I know I have to sit down with him and fully talk this out. Part of me feels like this conversation will lead to us breaking up because he really truly does want kids. I'm also worried that if he stays with me, he might resent me for not wanting kids like him. I just feel terrible. X200B TLDR, when my boyfriend and I started dating, I told him I didn't want kids and he said he was okay with it. 4 years later, I found out that Hess always wanted to be a dad from his family, and now I'm thinking that I can't truly make him happy wanting to live a child-free life. So I need to have a conversation and am feeling terrible because there is a good chance that we might break up over this. What story is 100% true, but still blows your mind? In 2004, Mitch was in his final semester at a college in Louisiana, when he met another senior named Kayla. The moment he saw her, he knew he was in love. After graduation, the pair stayed in Louisiana and moved in together while they got their careers off the ground. He was completely infatuated with her. 2 years later, the pair got married and shortly after, Kayla got pregnant. By the time their daughter was born, Mitch was making so much money that Kayla became a stay-at-home mom full-time. By the time their daughter was 2 years old, they had their son. Mitch was a complete family man and his life was perfect. A few months after his son's birth, Mitch was lounging in the TV room when something strange caught his eye. He noticed that the red lamp in the corner of the room was looking blurry. He rubbed his eyes and looked around the room, but nothing else was blurry. When he focused back onto the lamp, he noticed that the lamp was still distorted. Even after turning the TV off and walking over to the lamp, it was still blurry. He didn't have bad eyesight and was completely confused. He thought that it must have been an anomaly, so he turned back to the family room and turned the TV back on. However, no matter how hard he tried, the distorted lamp was in his peripheral vision the whole time. It bothered him to the point that he turned the TV back off and went to investigate the lamp once more. This time, he noticed that the lamp was not only blurry, but it was now upside down. Now he was genuinely concerned that there was something wrong with him. Nothing else in the entire room was blurry or upside down. A few minutes later, his wife and kids get home, and he decides to not tell his family about it. He is determined to figure it out himself. After dinner, the family plays some games together. Then everybody goes upstairs and falls asleep. But after everyone had gone to sleep, Mitch was laying in bed thinking about this lamp. Finally, he snuck out of his bed and he just stared at this lamp. He spent hours watching this lamp morph, turn upside down, and get more distorted. The next day, Kayla found Mitch passed out on the couch. Still, Mitch still doesn't tell her about the lamp. Kayla asked what was going on, and he told her that he wasn't feeling well, and was not going to go to work that day. But Mitch didn't go to work for 3 more days. He just sat on the couch, fixated on the lamp. Kayla picked up on his strange behavior, but Mitch never told her about the lamp. He kept telling her that he wasn't feeling well. She pleads for him to go see a doctor, but every time Mitch would say he's alright. As this lamp became larger and more distorted, Mitch became unable to respond to his wife. He became totally unresponsive, so Kayla decided to call a doctor to figure out what was going on. While she's on the phone, Mitch notices that the lamp is growing exponentially. It grew to the size of the room itself and all he could see was the color red. Then, Mitch starts to notice voices and screams coming from somewhere in the distance. He feels this blinding pain in his head. He opens his eyes and sees that he's laying on the sidewalk across from a building at his college with a crowd of people staring at him. He has no idea what's going on, so he naturally starts scanning the crowd looking for his wife and kids. But before he could find his family, a police officer ran over to him, picked him up, ran back to his police car, put him in the back, and drove off. When Mitch is in the back of the police car, he asks the officer, "What's going on?" The officer would tell him that he was attacked by a huge college football player and had been knocked unconscious. Mitch then asks where his wife and kids are, to which the officer said that he had no idea. That's when it clicked. The lamp wasn't real. Neither was his wife and kids. It was all a hallucination while he was unconscious. He had experienced 10 years of his life in just a few moments. Mitch was taken to the hospital where he would make a full physical recovery. Unfortunately, after he was released, he was horribly depressed and had to get intense therapy to grieve for the family that didn't exist. What moment was so heartbreaking that you'll never recover? Losing her was the hardest thing I've ever had to endure, but knowing where she was going hurt even more. I'm a 24-year-old guy, and I love tooling around in old cars. It's something I've done together with my dad since I was a kid, and he was all too happy to have me carry it on. So I work your typical 9 to 5 schedule, and quite often I'm in the garage after work fixing up this old Mustang I've been on for the last 2 years or so. It was a completely unrestored '65 Mustang that my dad had for years. He gave it to me to take on now that I'm out in the world. It was a special moment for the two of us. So one day, I started leaving the garage door open, and it's to the front so pretty much everyone can see what I'm doing. People stop by, chat, and say hello. It's great, I always love to chat it up, especially older folks that are happy to see a young guy getting his hands dirty working hard on a classic. But I would never have expected her. So about a year ago during the summer, the neighbor's mom asked if I could look after their little girl Rachel, a quiet little girl that always seemed well behaved. I didn't mind, but I said I'm really committed to working on this car. If you feel good enough to let her over here while I'm working on the car, not a problem. Turns out they're going through a rough patch. The dad works the third shift and the mom's got a part-time gig, so evening hours just aren't good for them. So I started looking after Rachel. She's quiet, usually reading books or watching the TV I brought out so she could be around me. I always made sure to be courteous, set a good example, and even try out some dad humor every now and then. Well, she starts to come out of her shell after a while and it was a joy. I still remember when she first asked about why I was working on the car. Why are you working on that car when you have one that's newer and works? Well, this car is about 45 years older than the other one. It's a classic. She'll be much prettier when I'm done with her. I've been sitting in the garage helping my pop since I was even younger than you. I always wanted to be like him and so I'd sit and learn and eventually he would let me help. Oh. Whenever I see dad he's always sleeping. Poor girl. I hadn't really thought about how the divorce and her parents' schedule would be hard on a girl her age. Well, he's working hard to provide for you. He's working a tough job. She just kind of was quiet after that. But after 2 or 3 months, she started being cheerful when she came over, always asking questions about what I was doing specifically. This part and that, why it needed to be done, what made it work. I was glad to impart knowledge. I think everyone likes teaching a bit, especially something you're passionate about. I started teaching her about tools, how to recognize which ones you need, what they can do on a car or around the house. She started to light up. I got the sense that outside of school, she didn't have much of a parental figure. Or anyone to teach her anything about life, or anything. One time my dad visited in his '66 GT convertible, and I took her for a ride in it. I'll always remember how she smiled, saying, "Is this what yours is going to be like?" Should be, but mine's a coupe so it won't be quite as nice. No, yours will be much better. 'Cause we've been doing it. My chin started to wobble, and my eyes teared up a little. I just smiled and said, "You're right, it will be." She'd really started to grow on me. I mean, it would be impossible not to let her into your heart. A bright-eyed smart little girl that just soaks up everything you teach her, wants to learn, and looks up to you like that. It made me sad because the times I saw her parents interact they were always snide or yelling at each other, when they were around that is. This spring I started noticing the mother leaving without a uniform, sometimes dressed to go out. I came to the conclusion she quit or wasn't working, but was still taking advantage of me babysitting. Which I didn't mind in the slightest, because Rachel was the best. Sometimes Rachel would be quiet when she came over, but I always waited until she would open up. She'd let out tidbits like, "Mommy woke me up late at night, she was acting funny." Or, "She came home with someone that wasn't daddy," or the like. It would pierce my heart, but I didn't know what to do except keep being a safe harbor for her of sorts. She started hugging me more often, squeezing me as hard as she could. I'd always get a lump in my throat. She's just wormed her way into my heart. How when I take a break and sit down, she'll climb all over me until I give her the proper attention. I'm always impressed when I ask her to hand me a tool and she picks the proper one no problem. We had some of the best times I can remember, just tinkering under my car, her with a raggedy old sweater of mine on with safety glasses so old dirt wouldn't fall in her eyes, watching me work, asking away. One time she nicked herself on the edge of the radiator support and I picked her up and went to bandage it up. I told her, most girls your age would cry if they got that little cut. She said brightly, "Now my hands are gonna get all beat up like yours." I didn't even know what to say, so I burst out laughing and hugged her and said, "You're the best little girl in the world, you know that?" Then a few weeks ago, her mom came over and said they were going to get a divorce, and if I could still keep watching her during the week. I told her I was sorry and absolutely, she's a delight to have around. Yesterday she seemed really down, and quiet unlike she had been in a long time. Turns out her parents will be separating and they'll have to move soon. She started crying and hugged me. She looked up at me, teary-eyed, and asked, "Does this mean I can't come over anymore?" I started tearing up a bit and choked out, "I don't know, Rachel, I don't know. I hope you can. I love you, you know that? You're the smartest, cutest, best little girl in the world and I love you." She just cried all the harder and said I love you too. She even asked if she could stay with me. Again I said I don't know, but I don't think it's in the cards. When she left yesterday I just sat down with a bottle of Jack and started crying. I just can't take it. That sweet beautiful little girl that wants to be just like me, giggles when she gets grease on her, tosses on my old dirty sweater when she comes over cause she wants to help. I just want to take her up in my arms and take away that pain. She doesn't deserve to have a crappy childhood growing up with a non-existent father or an uninterested mother. I just can't deal with it. It tears my heart apart. In honor of her, I'm naming that Mustang Rachel. First responders, what's the most heartbreaking scene you've witnessed on the job? It was so disturbing that my partner took his own life afterward. It was New Year's Eve, and I was on the 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. shift. My partner was also working the midnight shift at the station. The fire and police buildings are right next to each other, and being New Year's Eve, each of the stations was having a small get-together. The cops came over to one of our empty bays, and we were sitting down eating and talking about how much it sucked being on the shift. No alcohol to see the new year in, we always had a high number of calls due to fireworks being illegally set off, and they always had a high number of violence and public nuisance calls. Our alarm went off, and we jumped up and threw our jackets on before even checking our pager or the emergency information computer service. The boys next door got the same call, and we went out code 1 with the police escorting us. We arrived on the scene just before midnight. A young woman was standing on the edge of the building. It isn't a massive height, but it doesn't matter. She wouldn't survive if she fell. We all knew it. The crew leader shouted to get the ground covered, and the cops started talking to her. Jay had been handed the job. He told me it was because he was the youngest, that he would be able to relate more to her. She started crying and saying she didn't want to do it. It was a mistake. She just felt so alone that she just wanted it to stop. Then she said that it was too late, she had to do it because she had already done everything she needed to. Jay started to tell her that it didn't matter if everything was in place. She didn't need to do it, and they would help her. He started telling her that 2 people would be going into the building and would meet her at the window to help her down. That she wasn't alone, and everybody here was going to support her. No one was here to hurt her. All those really cliché things you hear in movies, but Jay had a way with people. He could tell you the sky was made just for you, and you would believe every word. Every word coming out of his mouth was filled with nothing but love and concern. I love that man, and even now he's gone, I still miss him. Things were going fine. We had been given the access code to the building. The cops had rung ambulances and requested emergency care and treatment. The young girl had calmed down and was trying to climb back into the window. When suddenly, she tripped and fell backward. Nobody had expected it. She hit the ground, and even with the ambulances working on her for a solid 15 minutes, she was pronounced dead. The coroner was called. Here's the bit that messed Jay up enough that he took his life. When she had told them that she had taken care of everything, she had meant her 2 children. 3 months and 4 years. They were found dead in their beds, cuddled up to their toys. Photos taken showed them looking like they were simply sleeping. The note they found on the table was begging for forgiveness from God for what she had done. The coroner stated that if they had been found within 15 minutes of our arrival, the 4-year-old may have had a small chance of surviving, although serious brain damage would have probably occurred. Jay always blamed himself for not sending a party in the minute they got there. We were evaluated as to why the fire department didn't have a fall mat. The first responders were suspended, and Jay couldn't live with himself. I lost Jay in the autumn of the new year. He would have been 26 in August. This was the most heartbreaking experience. It has ruined a number of families' lives and still haunts me to this day.